The Mercy of the Dragon by Nick Kyme. The final wall had fallen, and with it Venikov. The city had been called the Bloody Bastion by the Ranknar Blood Guard. It was impregnable, they had said. Now Venikov burned, its precincts as hollow as the confidence that had once proclaimed it unbreakable. And as it fell and burned, the Imperial war machine ground on. Sarda watched the city fall through his omniscope, glad for the kilometers between him and the armor-clad star warriors who had laid siege to his world. The hills where he had led those fleeing the destruction of Venikov would do little to stop the oppressors, however. How many? Asked Vedas. Sarda thought the Gurav priest sounded wary, not just with the fatigue of the war, but a spiritual malaise that came with the almost certain knowledge that your culture and everything you knew would soon be extinguished and replaced by another. But then Sartre had always thought too much. He had been thinking ever since the so-called emperor had made his proclamation. The emperor had spoken of unity and compliance, but to Sarda this had sounded like a conquest and annihilation. He adjusted the strap on his leather hauberk, suddenly uncomfortable. Blood Marshal Enoch has forged a last redoubt at the old keep in southern Venikov. How many, Captain? Repeated Vedis, the sound of a cloak rasping as he swept closer. Sarda tweaked the brass omniscope, adjusting the dials to focus in on the warriors and refugees fleeing Venikov. They were heading south to the hills, to the next city on Arad, the last city. He adjusted his armor again. Studs were digging in through his padded jerkin. A rime of salt crusted his forehead where his leather helm met skin and made him sweat. A few thousand. Is that all? Uttered Vedis, pausing at the thought. Sarda heard the priest's breath reverberate against the brass mask. Over 100,000 men entered that city. Blood Marshal Enoch has another 1,000 trying to hold them off. Teeth of Ranknar, hissed Vedis. Sarda doubted their patron god was listening. There was only one god that really mattered now, and he was on the other side. The dragon. We'll need to fall back to Ramastad. The Red City Citadel is formidable, said Sarda. Vedis nodded, starting to grow in confidence again. Yes, out here in the hills we are vulnerable. The Red Citadel can withstand a siege. Let's see if these curs have the stomach for it. I'll see the dragons slain on our walls. Blood dry. I swear it by Ranknar. A great explosion lit the horizon to the north. Tremors were felt as far as the hills. They ripped Venikov and the old keep apart. Sarda lowered the omniscope and let out a long, shuddering breath. He fixed Vedis. The blank visage of the mask had reflected in the priest's eyes. The mask's stylized representation of a gaunt human face, edged instead of curved, could not hide his fear. "What is it?" he demanded. "What happened?" "Blood Marshal Enoch is dead, Goryov." Vedis swallowed audibly. "Are you certain?" Sarda pointed a crimson glove in the direction of the city. Except there was no city. Venikov was gone. Only fire remained, a conflagration so large and ferocious it engulfed the sky like slow-spreading ink and turned it red. And at the heart of the blaze, killing with fang and claw, a giant in emerald scale. A myth brought terrifyingly to life. Vedis scarcely had voice enough to name it out loud. The dragon. "I am a son of a blacksmith," said Vulcan, grazing across the desert. "And you?" "What?" asked the Outlander. "What am I?" Vulcan turned to regard the warrior next to him. "You are no mere Outlander." The heat of the day was fading on Nocturne, and the tribesmen out on the ash plains were bringing in their herds as the two great beings stood on a high dune looking out at a world of fire. The warrior bowed his head, acknowledging the truth. He then raised a gauntleted hand to the sun and watched the light reflect off the metal. He had shed a lie, this warrior, one meant to put the Nocturne at ease and their chieftain at ease. "Am I not a man, Vulcan?" he asked, the rays catching not only his gauntlet but the rest of his armor-clad body, so that he shone with a radiant golden light. "You look like a king," Vulcan replied, and for the first time felt uncomfortable in the rough material of a blacksmith. "I am no king, but is a king not also a man?" "Not to the vassals of his kingdom." The warrior smiled, a mentor pleased with his student, and turned to face Vulcan. His hair caught on the hot wind, trailing like black smoke. His short red cloak fluttered, a statesman about to address his people. "I am the Emperor." "Ah, greater than a king, and your empire is the stars." The Emperor followed Vulcan's gaze to the red-stained heavens and grew somber. "Not yet. There's darkness out in the void." He looked back at Vulcan, his eyes cold with sorrow. "That is why I need you. This mood lasted only a moment before the warmth returned. A blacksmith's son to help me bring the light of creation? Yes, and to be one of my generals. Vulcan scowled, suddenly ill at ease. I am no warlord, and yet war has come to the galaxy. It must, Vulcan, and you shall be one of those who lead it. Mankind must emerge from old night and embrace the truth. Your truth. The words had the bite of accusation that Vulcan did not try to soften. The imperial truth that there are no gods and mankind's fate is what he or she makes it. I only know the truth of metal and how it bends to fire. Vulcan looked down at his hands as if imagining the fuller grip against his leathered skin. The truth of what I can see and the earth beneath my feet. And that is why I need you. I still don't understand. You will. And what if I do not wish to leave? General, warlord, call it what you will, but I have never imagined a sword in my hand or an army at my command. You lead your people. That is different. I protect Nocturne from those who would see it harmed or enslaved. You are talking about conquest. I am a maker, not a. You would prefer a hammer to a sword and an anvil against which to strike it. Vulcan nodded, and his luster appeared to fade. He seemed smaller, more ordinary. His face looked weathered, as if he had spent some time out in the wild places of his world. It was the face of a farmer or a hunter. I want you to join me willingly, Vulcan. Will you allow me to convince you? I am confident you will see the necessity of your presence and see my cause as the wind rose the desert, bringing with it the scent of ash. A mountain peak erupted, releasing a tongue of flame in the heavens. From deep beneath the earth, a sympathetic roar answered. The time of trial comes again soon, Vulcan said. It does, said the Emperor, and it touches more than just this world. This is a trial for all of mankind. Vulcan's gaze lingered on the mountain. Its name was Deathfire, before returning again to the Emperor. I agree to your proposal. If you can convince me, I will leave Nocturne and go with you. But I have questions. Then ask, Vulcan, and I promise you I shall only answer with the truth. They had promised the truth, but had come cloaked in lies. Sarda remembered these words from the great Goryav, the Incarnadine himself. They were to be the priest's last, the violent kiss of heat as the temple dais turned into a storm of fire and blood drowned out what followed. The priests were all dead bar one, their faith slain along with them. We will still have vengeance, said Vetus, leaning into Sarda's ear. He could smell the alcohol and the glory of his breath. It had the tang of warm iron to it. They had sealed the gates to the red citadel. Cannons girded its high rust-red walls. Men thronged its battlements dressed in full martial panoply. Bloodguard in crimson leather and red knights in ceramic war garb that reflected their namesake. It was a long, deep wall the garrison held, one that stretched for almost a kilometer to both the east and the west. At the heart of the city, imposing and formidable, was Recknar's oldest keep. It had never been taken, ever. The Incarnadine who held it held Recknar. The Incarnadine who held it held Recknar. Yet, as Venkov faded to a dirty orange glow on the horizon, those behind the walls cowered. They feared the fire. They feared the dragon. We should not have refused them, said Sarda, and felt himself yanked hard by his gorget to face Vetus. Renounce our faith! The priest spat drunkenly and drew a few eyes in their direction. You are a holy warrior of Recknar. He trailed off. The title had less and less meaning with every passing hour. And where is Recknar now? Asked Sarda. Vetus released him. He would not abandon us, he rasped, and looked to the courtyard below. We must make a sacrifice. Sarda seized the priest's wrist as he made to draw his bloodletter. The knive's dark edge caught the fading light and flashed in Vetus' eyes, making him squint. It does not matter anymore. What good would it do? Said Sarda. Vetus made a half-hearted struggle. Those who caught his hungry gaze recoiled. We can still make an offering, and we have weapons, more than one. They have served Arad for centuries. The blessed of the Recknar, he would not. The words caught in his throat as he joined the hundreds of others in the red citadel, staring at the horizon. A black, irregular line stood amongst the smoke and the fading glow of the fire. It was a slow-moving tide, a wave of elongated cannon barrels, tank tracks, and riveted armor, and it was about to wash Ramstad and the red citadel away. Raise shields! A watchman cried. Recknar preserve us, whispered Vetus, as the heavens shook with manufactured thunder and the imperial bombardment began. And as the first enemy shells began to fall and the cannons on the red citadel's walls answered, a dark mood came over Vetus. Gather them, Sarda. The bloodletter kissed the warrior's neck and drew a bead of fluid shaped like a red ruby. as many as you can. He looked to the Imperial line and the Star Warriors advancing heedlessly into the Ranknar cannonade. I will anoint the Bogatyrs and then unleash them. And if they fail, asked Sarda, with faith they shall not, said the priest, bile-coloring his voice. But if they do, then we both know we have one last gambit to play. Was it a trick? Oh shit. Was it a trick? Asked Vulcan, looking to the sky and half expecting the promised ship to appear, belching fire through a swath of sulphuric cloud. A trick? Asked the Emperor. The way you shed your disguise. You didn't merely cast off a cloak or lower a mask. You changed everything. Is this, he gestured to the Emperor, and in his gilded glory, your true self? Isn't identity a matter of perception? You see, what? A gold-clad ruler, a king, you said. Others might see something different, a man, a father. But was it a trick? Vulcan pressed. What does it matter? Please, said the Emperor, holding up a hand to show his sincerity. I am not trying to avoid the question, but I am interested in your rationale for asking it. I would know the manner and design of the command who bids me to leave my home and people. I am a simple man, but do not think me as credulous. You are neither, Vulcan, the Emperor replied, but did not elaborate. And yes, I suppose it was a trick of sorts, a means of determining the truth. Then are you a sorcerer? Vulcan asked. Was it magic? The Emperor's mood darkened fractionally, so that only someone who was particularly astute would notice. Vulcan slightly raised his eyebrow. Not a sorcerer, said the Emperor. Magic is not real. It is merely science yet to be understood. Show primitive culture fire for the first time, and they call it magic. Bring a starship to a backwards world, yet to invent the combustion engine, and it is hailed as witchcraft. Superstition, the darkness of old ways, and the atrocities committed in their name. That is what I wish to bring an end to. So, you are a scientist. A reductive term, the Emperor answered, thoughtful. But as fitting as any, I have a laboratory and have accomplished much to reach this point through experimentation and endeavor. And war, said Vulcan. You are a warrior too. Yes, and war. I won't lie. There has been blood spilled on this journey, and there will be more. I never imagined the enlightenment of mankind would be an easy task, nor one accomplished without violence, however regrettable. The emperor's eyes seemed to cloud for a moment, then lost in abstract thought. I have had failures, some of which I shall never speak of. My brothers. The emperor did not answer, and that was answer enough. Will you not tell me of them? Asked Vulcan. Are they like me? Utterly unlike you, said the emperor, brightening. And that is your single greatest trait, my proudest achievement. Will I meet them if I agree to follow you into the stars? Yes, you will, though I have yet to find them all. You will learn much from them, and they from you. Vulcan glanced down at the sand accumulating around his boots. The desert was shifting again. Soon it would swallow this ridge, and another would emerge elsewhere. Are they from worlds like Nocturne? As harsh and beautiful, you mean? Asked the emperor. Some are. Some are kings, others are scholars, chieftains, slaves. His eyes fell upon Vulcan. Even blacksmiths. What would they think of me? Could I really feel a bond of fraternity with them, and they with me? The emperor smiled. Let me tell you of Ferris. Let's get a drink. We are. Oh, wow. Only. Well, I mean, 10:43, but first few pages were cover and stuff, so probably like page 7 of 38. Okay. The Gorgon grinned, an altogether ugly expression on such a grizzled face. He is ferocious. His voice was gritty and harsh as his appearance. His black armor was shorn to the bare ceramite in places, though the scorch marks caused by fire barely showed. The way you described him, I thought you did not expect a warrior, said the emperor, his gilded panoply gleaming. He stood upon a blasted hillock. Not that he needed the vantage to look imposing. His stature and power spoke for themselves. Despite the battles, he remained pristine, as radiant and terrifying as a nuclear sunrise. I expected a blacksmith, but he is a destroyer. Much of the outer lands beyond the major cities of Ranknar had been reduced to ash. A bombardment lasting several days had softened up the native defenses, but had seen the same forces dug in instead of broken as the emperor had hoped. The imperial assault, when it came, swept across all 6 continents as relentless as a hurricane. Still, the Ranknar had endured, buoyed by their perverse faith, the reason for the Imperium's proclamation of extinction. And so the emperor had unleashed his dragon, and the lands had burned. Only then, slowly swallowed by fire, had the Ranknar showed any signs of defeat. I thought the Wolf King had fury, said Ferris, admiring the choleric spirit of his newfound brother. But this, where did you find him? A death world, said the emperor, his piercing gaze seeing more and ranging farther than any other on both the battlefield and second battle line where he stood with his son, Ferris Manus. One consumed by fire. Ferris gave a snort of laughter. They watched from the blasted hillock. The troops and armored divisions arrayed before them and ready for the Gorgon's command. His warriors, his iron hands. The dragon led a company of them and several cohorts of army auxilia. Ooh, it's so cool. The scent of engines and hot metal from the idling artillery and heavy battle tanks wafted over the mustering and petered out and was swallowed up by the stink of sweat and death by the time it reached the battle less 100 meters away. Ferris folded his silver arms, restive. They shimmered with an uncanny luster, the metal of their forging as miraculous as it was mysterious. A massive warhammer lay against one armored shoulder, a gift from Fulgrim, and one he desired to bloody again. For now, he would do as his father ordered. He would watch, and let the dragon wreak havoc. Ferris suspected it was not only his newfound brother who was being tested this day. Draconic in both aspect and temperament, he said, alluding to the savage, scalloped warplate worn by the dragon. You taught him much of your craft, Ferris, asked the emperor. None, in truth. He needed no help in that regard. When I reached the forge, he was gone, and the armor with him. The emperor smiled as if pleased with his works. Your assessment? Overly flamboyant, but it appears to serve well. Him, not his armor, Ferris. I, all the creative Primarchs care about the creative things in the other Primarchs. Like, Ferris cares more about how Vulcan looks while killing than whether or not Vulcan can kill. A raised eyebrow and a grunt of acknowledgement preceded the Gorgon's reply. He fights like a Medusan earworm. Are they all like that where he came from? No. He is unique, as are you. His silver fingers clenched and unclenched without Ferris realizing. He nodded. He He is impressive, he admitted, but then turned disdainful. But Russ and Horace, even Fulgrim, they match his prowess. I see nothing special about him. You will. The Emperor paused abruptly, and the Gorgon felt his hackles rise. They are opening the gates. Ferris hid his unease as his father's use of prescience remaining bullish. Then they are as foolish as they are blind. A sortie is insane. They don't know when they are beaten. Does any beast, when cornered, they risk annihilation, said Ferris, as the gigantic city gates did indeed open. Get some coffee, coffee, coffee. Gonna make my heart explode. Desperate men perform desperate acts. I feel fear in them. A fearful enemy attacks without restraint. This will be costly for us. A red mist gathered around the opening, obscuring what they are all soldiers of the risk. Beware of profligacy. Beware your profligacy, my son. Life is not as cheap as you think. The ruddy fog parted, and what stood before stopped the Gorgon's reply dead. His eyes widened, felt as far away as the second battle line. Ferris swung his warhammer into both hands. Now can we intervene? The Emperor had already drawn a glittering golden sword. Its edge burst into flames. Yes, now we can. That's sick, dude. Fucking awesome. Fuck up some bogateers. The boat alone. And where they walked, the ground trembled. Sarda watched them stride from the gate in the languid manner that creatures of such immense stature have. 3 Gollum engines, their phage swords ether, bleeding red ether, and their ocular weapon mounts cycling to lethality. He stood almost eye to eye with the Bogatyrs, despite the fact he was nearly 20 meters up on the city's foremost battlements. His awe at the sight of the red citadel's guardians hid a secret disgust for the method by which they had been aroused for war. An army came with them, 6 phalanxes of red knights of the orders Sengrove and Incarnadov, rode at the flanks with 12 platoons of blood guard brought up the rear, gun chariots in tow. So they're basically going against like the equivalent of Cathay or the Grand or the people in the Grand Alliance from AOS. That's sick. Thunder cracked overhead as artillery on both sides exchanged fire across a kilometers-long battlefront. The tanks of the Imperium sat on the ridge beyond the city, dug in behind makeshift palisades. They faced the cannons jutting from the red citadel's walls. Smoke and fire laced the air with every fresh volley. The bogatiers strode through it, dauntless. Plumes of earth and fire reached up into the sky with every explosive impact, taking the broken bodies of men with them. The bogatiers remained inviolate, emerging through overlapping clouds of smoke, their energy shields crackling with particulate. Okay, so the Bogateers are just titans. Okay. Sarda watched an ivory giant cut an Imperial tank in two. The vehicle's bifurcated sides fell open, exposing a ruined anatomy within. Nothing lived. The red ether from the phage sword saw to that. The Bogateers had the appearance of marble statues, like knights of antiquity, but were nothing of the sort. Fashioned by the Goryak priests, they were war engines, part machine, part biological. They reaped death through the Imperial ranks. Scores of men fell burning to the radiation beams of the Bogateers' ocular array. Another reduced the transport vehicle to molten slag. Small victories, but they gave the Red Knights and the Blood Guard heart. Clinging to the battlement's edge, almost wishing he could be part of the melee, Sarda dared to believe. "We can defeat them," whispered Vetus. The skin of his hands and forearms was flecked with dark spots. His manner verged on manic, but Sarda agreed. "Ragnar has not abandoned us. He is with us." And Vetus turned as he heard others on the battlements echo his words. He repeated them, louder. "He is with us." The defenders were back. "Ragnar!" "Wait," Sarda bellowed over the cry of affirmation. He gestured to the battlefield, and all eyes went to where a lone figure held his ground, standing in defiance of the Bogateers. Sarda held his breath. Before the Ivory Knights was a dragon. "I believe you," said Vulcan, staring into the desert reaches, trying to commit to memory this desolation that he called home. "In the Imperial truth? I believe you want to save mankind. I believe you have a vision and mean to see it done whatever the cost." "I have, and I will," the Emperor replied. "It sounds bloody. It will be. Conquest always is. But there is darkness in the galaxy, Vulcan. The remnants left behind after old night. Horrors you can scarcely imagine. Superstition and fear, a race enslaved by its own isolation. There is but one path for mankind that does not end in extinction. The path I offer. I desire mankind's preeminence, its evolution. I raised armies and unified a world to try to accomplish it, and created sons, primarchs. Yes, said the emperor, his voice serious but not unkind. I made you and your brothers. Vulcan frowned. Why? You already said we are your generals, your legacy. But why create us so differently and cast us far from your sight? The emperor pursed his lips, and Vulcan suspected there were some truths he would not he would not reveal. I am a singular being, Vulcan. I am a man, and also more than a man. I sometimes think of myself as a creator, much as you think of yourself, a maker. At other times, a father. Yet, I find I am removed. My concerns are of a lofty nature. You cannot relate to them, said Vulcan, understanding, to mankind, even though you claim to be one of them. You made sons so that you would not be alone, so that you could share company with like minds, if not equal minds. The emperor smiled. You are partly right. I have a better fate for mankind. I would see them elevated, long lasting, perpetual. And what of the fates of your sons, sent across the void to worlds of fire and ice? Was that too a part of your design? I see much, but not all, was all the emperor would say. And again, Vulcan sensed there was more. Above, the throaty roar of engines shook the sky. A ship appeared, obscured by cloud, a distant but growing silhouette in the heavens. A vessel comes, said the emperor. It is bound for Terra and will arrive soon. He turned to Vulcan. Have I convinced you? Vulcan watched the ship, imagining his destiny closing around him, the wide aperture of possibility narrowing to a single vanishing point. Vulcan, said the emperor when no answer came, are you decided? Vulcan met his father's gaze, a father that up until a few hours ago he did not know he had. Enbel was his father, a blacksmith, a good man, a just man. Could this emperor claim to be so too? To leave Nocturne and my people unprotected? It is no easy thing, you ask. You want to bring light into darkness, and you will wage war to achieve it. You need warlords, a sword to conquer or a sword to kill or conquer, not a hammer to build with it. I need you, Vulcan. That is why I'm here. It is the sole reason I have crossed the sea of stars to find you. A sword to conquer, a hammer to build. One need not render the other obsolete. Vulcan thought of that. He looked back to the desert again, hoping some truth that had so far eluded him would be revealed in the whirling eddies playing across the sand. I am torn. I have never considered myself a warrior or a general. I only want peace. You have told me much of my brothers, of Ferris, of Fulgrim, Lehman, and Horus. They are just the conquerors of your age of Imperium. I am a blacksmith, a warrior. I understand what I might learn from them, and they from each other. But what could I possibly teach them, Father? Answer this, and then I will decide. The bogatir burned, broken apart, its angles shorn to stumps. It wallowed on the battlefield, deserted by the tide and left to die. The dragon stood upon its corpse, the exultant victor. As he raised his blades to the missile-choked sky, a cheer went up from the warriors he led. This sentiment was reversed in the groan and despair vented by the Ragnar army. Sarda looked on in disbelief as the other two Gollum engines shared the fate of the first. They had dispersed across the battlefield, majestic and titanic generals leading the army on. One fell to a determined fusillade of turret fire from 3 Imperial tank squadrons. It shook as its energy shield imploded, and then a deep crack split its breastplate, presaging critical damage. It took one more faltering step, a dead thing unable to a dead thing unable to comprehend it was no longer alive before lurching forwards and crashing to the ground. Men from both sides died beneath it, flattened like paper effigies. Several of the tanks that landed the killing blow were crushed. Explosions rippled the bogatir's flaming carcass like nerve tremors. Then it was still. The last died more swiftly, almost too fast to perceive. A firestorm took it, or a man all clad in gold. Sarda saw both, and yet neither. Glimpses of something that defied reasonable explanation before the bogatir capitulated utterly. It simply peeled apart as if whatever stitched its, its being together had unspooled. Limbs, torso, and head all separated. Unable to mount a defense or appreciate its demise, it simply discombobulated. The east and west flanks collapsed after these defeats. The armies wailed like the sand in a broken hourglass, without a powerful general to contain and steer it. Those who remained retreated to the gate for salvation. The army withdrew. The dying order Sangro, buying what meager time they could for Ragnar, the last of the sand, slowly tipping out. We have no other choice. Vedis' fear spread with viral efficiency as he watched the rout, but it was threaded with madness like blood laced through spit. A feral desire to inflict pain on the aggressors outside Ramastad's walls had taken over the priest. "We can end this," said Sarda. Vedis snorted his derision. "It ends with death, ours and theirs. We have the ultimate weapons to punish them. The last gambit. It's not a gambit if we are all dead, priest. We can end this. We can offer to surrender. The hint of something murderous flashed in Venus's eyes. There will be none, or do you defy me? The knife shimmered red in the light. Sarda glanced down to the courtyard, letting out a ragged breath. He gave the orders to bar the gates as the last dregs of the army came through it and to fight to the death. A rear guard of knights had been left behind to slow the Imperial army down. They wore close-fitting ceramic armor. Well, fucking retards, dude. I'm gonna wear my armor out of pots and pans. I like clay. It was sleek, durable, and the color of flayed muscle. The helms had sophisticated target array. Each knight carried a propelling lance with a concomitant energy core and self-loading shot pistols mounted on their wrists. They rode grav sleds, heavily armored to the front and tapering to a maneuvering fin at the back. But they were still men, and men could not stand against primates. Ferris destroyed every knight that dared cross swords with him, his hammer a deadly metronome in his silver hands. He silently applauded their bravery, but swatted them aside like wasps. An irritant, but nothing more. His true quarry ranged ahead, possessed by an even greater fury, and about to charge the gates of the city on his own. When Ferris came upon the first of the failed statue engines and saw what its shattered chest cavity harbored, he realized why. Blood Asenath. He felt the same pure rage well up inside him that had overtaken the dragon. A child lay dying in the carcass of the statue engine, a withered and wretched thing, half drained of blood. It was abominable science, a machine fueled by the blood of the living. A parasitical engine fed children to give it animus. Appalled, Ferris almost missed the box crackle in his warhelm. It was the dragon. "Bring down the gates," he said, drunk on wrath, his voice a predatory snarl. "Now, father!" Ferris found the Emperor on the battlefield a short distance away. The Imperial army had closed ranks as the enemy fell back, consolidating to a position of strength, their Emperor inspiring the utmost discipline. If the self-proclaimed master of mankind felt anything at the dragon's words, there was no sign. He merely raised his flaming sword. Moments later, a concentrated barrage struck the main gates of the city. A blow so unerring that Ferris wondered if the Emperor had applied some of his strange craft to make it so. The gate split apart, the wall that held it rupturing and collapsing at the same time. Dust and smoke billowed outwards, clouding an outpouring of burned and shattered rock. It was a small breach, a crack in an otherwise sprawling face of rock, but it was all Vulcan needed. The dragon ran for the gap in the wall, easily outpacing the few warriors still with him, and killed everything in his path. Ferris looked down sadly on the dying child and gave it mercy. Then he went after his brother. To the dragon! He roared to the warriors in his command, Vox boosting his voice so that the very air trembled. His brother had disappeared into the smoke-choked darkness just in front of the wall. He cannot fight an entire army, even a defeated one, and win, he said. The emperor did not answer, and Ferris had no time to look and see if he had heard him. And then he saw the weapon, wheeled in position on a great iron carriage. It had the look of a spire, tall and ugly. Barbs ran down a dark metal shaft that terminated in a narrow spike like an arrowhead. It protruded menacingly from behind the city's broken battlements, more dominant than any of its towers, and bleeding red miasma. Ferris knew its ilk, if not this specific design. Virus weapon. It was pointing straight up. The natives intended to saturate the atmosphere with a contagion, something wrought by the rancid blood signs. Father, now the emperor spoke. I have seen it, my son. There is no time to withdraw that missile. I will do what I can to stop it. Reacting to the obvious threat, the Imperial artillery chain redoubled its efforts and unleashed repeated missile salvos against the city. Detonations marched the walls, blasting rivetments, tearing the garrison apart, reaching towards the shattered gatehouse. Ferris did not slow. He would get to his brother. He would stop the virus missile from ever launching, or they would die together. He had about made peace with his potential death when the dragon's voice came over the Vox again. Hold your fire! Hold all weapons! His impassioned command reverberated, reaching enemies and allies alike. He stood before the breach, barely a meter away, though the soot and displaced earth made it impossible to see what had made him stop. It took a few seconds, but the steady barrage began to slow. Ferris kept running, possessed of an urgency that felt strange and unsettling, concern for a brother he had never met. Gray cloud briefly obscured his vision before it passed, and he saw him again, his mysterious brother charging the breach. The last missile fell, already on its deadly path, and too late to be recalled or brought down. It struck the gatehouse. It struck the breach. Father! Ferris cried out, surprised at his sudden dismay. His legionaries turned aghast to where fire and destruction had shattered the gatehouse. Men in the Imperial army ranks slumped, stunned. No one had seen a Primarch fall before. Most believed they were immortal. Nothing could survive, whispered Ferris, trying to disbelieve the evidence of his own senses. Father, is he? He asked, louder. The Emperor said nothing, as an anxious silence stole over the battlefield. The fighting had stopped. Wait! A weary voice came over the Vox, and through the parting smoke, across embers of burning wood and stone still flickering at his leaden feet, emerged the dragon. He had lost his war helm, and one shoulder guard hung by a ragged thread. There was blood, his own. A crack split his breastplate. He held his left arm close to his body. Ferris stopped a meter away. You live, though I cannot fathom how, he said, and eyed the onyx-skinned giant with wary respect. I must be tougher than I look. Ferris gave a short, mirthless laugh. You look tough, brother. His eyes narrowed, heightened senses still alert to any sudden threat. You bled for them. Why? The onyx giant smiled and moved his arm away to reveal a child lying in his grasp, little more than a babe, terrified but breathing. His red eyes flared like hot coals, diabolical yet warm. It was the first of many contradictions that Ferris would come to learn about his brother. She lives too, he said, and I bled for life, for innocence. She is not alone. There are others. This war is over. As they saw the dragon cradling the child, the warriors of the city lost their taste for blood and laid down their weapons. Then, with the smoke yet to dissipate and the fires of battle still burning, the emperor came forth and gave his edicts. He promised clemency for the natives and the rule of the imperium. He promised truth and share of his dream for mankind's preeminence amongst the stars. Sarda had listened dumbly to the words of the Golden Lord and recalled them dimly as he tramped aboard the transport. He was bound for a ship that would take him and his kind to other worlds, to other colonies. He did not spare a glance for the corpse hanging from the battlements. Vetus could rot for all it mattered now. He had seen the dragon's selfless act, witnessing a sacrifice that gave the word fresh meaning in his eyes. Mercy. They had all seen it. He chose to remember it, and he heard his name spoken amongst the Imperials. Not the dragon, not the beast, but a legend all the same. They had called him Vulcan. What is your answer? Asked Vulcan. It is simple, said the emperor, and his expression betrayed no emotion beyond the desire to speak the truth. Your brothers will be great and powerful. They are beyond mankind in so many ways, as are you. They will learn to be warriors quickly, the ways of conquest and liberation, leading armies, inspiring the lesser men around them to greatness will be second nature to them, as it will to you. But your lesson, Vulcan, it is the most crucial, and you are uniquely disposed to teach it. The Emperor put a fatherly hand on Vulcan's shoulder. Humanity. They did not speak again until the ship came, but when it did, Vulcan bid farewell to Nocturne and followed his father into the sea of stars. And that is what the fuck? What the hell? Oh, what the hell, man? There's another Vulcan. There are 2 books in the Primarch series about Vulcan. That is annoying as shit. What the hell did I just read? What? That doesn't make any sense. Well, okay. I guess I got tricked. That's okay. I still enjoyed it. That was a cool short story. Definitely a short story. Next, I don't know. We'll see. Maybe read Mark of Faith. I don't know. Say overall stories probably like 4 out of 5. Yeah. It's cute. It's nice. It would be a lot better if it went together with like the main Primarch's book about Vulcan. I don't know why they had to break it up like they did. That was annoying. But thank you for watching.